بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So in the first part of this lecture today, we established that Sawm is from the greatest affairs of ibadah due upon the body as an actualization of the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. And we said that the manifestation of Tawheed within fasting is something that is emphasized and very prominent because of the very nature of this act of worship. And that Allah Azza wa Jal has specified for this act of worship something that we do not find for other actions of worship. It is done for the sake of Allah, and Allah Azza wa Jal will reward for it in a way that is unlike other actions. We also established that ar-riya, which is showing off, is something that doesn't really enter into this act of worship by its very nature. And then we looked at some of the other manifestations of Tawheed. We cited from numerous scholars in that regard. So all of that was the first half of our lecture today. And the second half of our lecture to carry on then from the first part where we emphasize the aspect of Tawheed. This now leads us to ask the question, what should a Muslim be looking to gain from every Ramadan, from his fasting? And there are three, well maybe 4 or 5 objectives. There are in no particular order. But there are 4 or 5 things that a Muslim should be seeking to take advantage of or to try and fulfill by way of his fasting. And because the very purpose of fasting is to acquire taqwa, to acquire piety, then a person has something by which to measure whether he has benefited from his fasting or not. And so these 4 or 5 things that we are going to mention, inshallah ta'ala, perhaps you can use them as goals and objectives that you should increase in or that you should try to attain. And all of them, they all return back to our central theme, which is the aspect of Tawheed, manifestation of Tawheed. So all of these are connected to the general theme of our lecture, which is that everything that we're going to discuss is connected to Tawheed. It's a manifestation of Tawheed. So let's start with this is the 4th point in our series. So the first point was that fasting is ibadah, therefore it is an actualization of Tawheed. The second point was the aspect of ikhlas, that this is something that is more natural within fasting because of the very nature of this act. So ikhlas relates to the Tawheed of Allah. Thirdly, we spoke of al-mutaba'ah, which is following the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. This itself is Tawheed, because you are actualizing the command of Allah Azza wa Jal to follow His Messenger. This is obedience to Allah. So this now is the 4th point in our series of points. So point number 4, and this is ad-du'a, which is supplication. And we will see that a Muslim, generally he will make more du'a during the month of Ramadan then he will at other times. And naturally speaking, this is because there is a virtue and an excellence for dua at specific times. So we want to speak about dua itself and its connection to Tawheed. So first of all, you know the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. Ad-du'a, it is ibadah. It is the essence of worship. And when we return back to what the scholars have written, scholars like Ibn al-Qayyim, Ibn Taymiyyah, and a collection of other scholars, as to why ad-du'a is the essence of worship, It is because ad-du'a has connected to it or around it so many other elements. So for example, the fact that you are making du'a to Allah it indicates that you believe that He is singled out in benefit and harm. You only make du'a to someone who has control and power over benefit and harm. Also because the heart itself, at the point of making du'a, within the heart there is veneration of Allah Azza wa Jal. You are making ta'zeem of Allah. Allah is great in your heart. And likewise you are hoping for Allah's response. You have raja. And likewise in your heart there is a reliance upon Allah Azza wa Jal. You are making tawakkul upon Allah to bring about the effect that you desire. And so there are so many things that are taking place when a person is making dua, that really a dua, calling out to Allah, is the essence of what worship is, because it has all these other elements which are part and parcel of it. So we see that in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal has ordered that we call upon Him. وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. And your Lord has said, call upon me, and I shall respond to you. Allah Azza wa Jal has ordered us to call upon Him not because He is in need of our dua. Rather, He is Al-Ghani. He is the one who is free of all need. So this shows that the command given to us to call upon Allah is for our benefit. Allah Azza wa Jal does not gain anything from His servants. Rather, He commands that which is of benefit to His servants. We are the fuqara. We are the ones who are in need. We are the ones who are needy. We are the ones who are in poverty. And so when He ordered us to make dua, He then promised that He shall respond. Astajib lakum. I shall indeed respond to you. And this response, this shows that a dua is always responded to. But that response can be in a number of ways. And that's why we see in the hadith, which is related, an authentic hadith, in which the Messenger of Allah said, مَا مِنْ أَحَدٍ يَدْعُو بِدُعَاءٍ إِلَّا آتَاهُ اللَّهُ مَا سَأَلَ أَوْ كَفَّ عَنْهُ مِنْ سُوءٍ مِثْلَهُ. And then he continued, مَا لَمْ يَدْعُو بِإِثْمٍ أَوْ قَطِيئَةِ رَحِمٍ. The Messenger of Allah said, there is no one who makes a dua except that Allah will give him what he asked for, or He will withhold or prevent from him an evil equivalent to it. So an evil equivalent to the good that he was making dua for. So long as he does not make dua for evil, for sin, or for cutting off of ties. So upon this, the scholars have explained that whenever a person makes dua, there are three outcomes that can take place. The first is that the dua will be answered by Allah Azza wa Jal in the life of this world. So he will receive whatever he asked for. Secondly, if Allah does not answer that dua, then unknown to the servant, then He will withhold an evil or repel an evil from that servant. And thirdly, that if none of these takes place, then that servant will receive a reward. He will be recompensed on the Day of Judgment, equivalent to whatever it was he was asking for, but he didn't receive in the life of the world. This means that by making dua to Allah Azza wa Jal, you will definitely be answered in any one of those ways. Either you will receive what you asked for, or an evil will be repelled from you, or on Yawmul Qiyamah, you will be recompensed for that dua. So this means that you have nothing to lose from making dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. In general, a believer should always be making dua. And when we read the statements from the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and the Salaf, we find from them an encouragement to make dua for everything. Ask for anything. Every little thing. Ask dua, make dua to Allah and ask for that thing. And then we see, when we reflect upon this even further, the scholars explain, we have some statements here from Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahumullah, and others, and we'll try to summarize the issue because there are lengthy quotations. When we look at dua itself, dua is of two types. There is dua ul-mas'ala and there is dua ul-ibadah. So when you make dua, either you are making dua in the sense that you are asking something from Allah, either a benefit or removing a harm. This now is mas'ala. You are asking for something in the worldly sense. Oh Allah, repel this evil from me. Oh Allah, cure this disease. Oh Allah, grant me such and such. You're asking for a benefit. So either you are asking for something from Allah in the life of this world, or you are making dua in the sense that it is ibadah, it is actually worship, in the sense that you are calling upon Allah with fear and with hope. So at the point of making dua, your heart, within it there are emotions like fear and hope and aspiration and things of that nature. So what the scholars explain is that the dua of mas'ala, when you're asking for something, and the dua of ibadah, they are mutalaziman. They are binding to each other. The two affairs are binding to each other. They are connected. So when you make one, it's binding that you are making the other one. So here Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah explains, he says that, just to summarize what he says, that when you call upon anything, you are only calling that thing because you believe that that thing or that person controls benefit and harm. Benefit and harm. You can only ever be calling something or someone whom you believe has control over benefit and harm. And this is what is a deity. A deity is one that has control over benefit and harm. That's why Shaykh al-Islam to me, he says, وَكُلُّ مَنْ يَمْلِكُ الضُّرْ وَالنَّفْعِ فَإِنَّهُ هُوَ الْمَعْبُودِ لا بد أن يكون مالكا للنفع والضر. That everyone who has control over benefit and harm, then that one is a ma'bud. It is necessary that such a one is a controller and owner of benefit and harm. And that's why in the Quran, when you look at how Allah Azza wa Jal, He shows rejection against the mushrikeen, you see that it is on the basis that those they are worshipping have no control over benefit and harm. By way of example, the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَلَا تَدْعُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَنْفَعُكَ وَلَا يَضُرُّكَ. Do not invoke those besides Allah who can neither benefit you or that can neither harm you. وَيَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُمْ. And they worship besides Allah those that do not harm them nor can benefit them. So Allah Azza wa Jal has negated here from those deities which are worshipped any control over harm and benefit, either for themselves or for those besides them. And so this indicates that when a person is making dua, you can only be making dua to someone about whom you believe has actual control over benefit and harm. And this is du'a'ul mas'ala. This is when you are asking for something. But connected to this has to be du'a'ul ibadah. Because when you ask someone for something, then you have to be hoping in that person. You have to have raja. And you have to have fear as well, hoping that the thing might be lost. So this is why these two affairs are binding to each other. Dua is du'a'ul mas'ala and du'a'ul ibadah. So let's give a scenario. A person, let's say he's suffering from an illness, and he makes dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. Oh Allah, remove this illness for me and relieve me of this pain. So here the dua is du'a'ul mas'ala. He's asking for something in the worldly sense, the repelling of some harm. But by necessity connected to this has to be du'a'ul ibadah. This is in the sense that his heart, at the time of making this request and asking this from Allah, his heart must be feeling and experiencing some emotions like hoping in Allah, hoping in a response from Allah, his heart being reliant upon Allah to bring him the effect, his heart being apprehensive and fearing Allah in case the dua is not answered. So it is binding that when one is made, then the other one follows. And likewise, when a person is making, he's making dua al-ibadah, when his heart is experiencing these feelings, then clearly it is because he has a need and he's asking for something, his heart is wanting something. So the two things, as we see here from this speech of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, that the two things are binding. This now leads us to the ayah, back to the same verse that we mentioned. Allah Azza wa Jal, He said, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي, another verse, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. When my servants ask you concerning me, then indeed I am close. I respond to the call of the supplicant when he calls upon me. So we see Ibn Taymiyyah, he says that this ayah, it applies to both types of dua. Both types of dua. And whichever way you want to explain this ayah, it means, it has been said that Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying, I will give him whatever he asked me, or I shall reward him because he worshipped me. Right? So in other words, the meaning of this ayah, أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ, that the one who calls upon me, I shall respond to the one who calls upon me. What does it mean? It means that either I will give him what he asked for, this is dua ul-mas'ala, the dua of asking for something, or Allah says, or Allah it means it responds, that I will reward him for him worshipping me. Which means that this means the dua of ibadah. So in any case, by way of these two verses, what Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah is saying, that in the Quran, the dua that we are speaking of is of these two types. Either you are asking Allah for something, a benefit or removal of a harm, and at the time that you are doing it, it is binding that there is also the dua of ibadah, which is the heart, experiencing those actions of worship when it is actually making the dua. So these two things are binding. They are connected together. So the point in all of this is to illustrate how this is obviously connected to Tawheed. When you are calling upon Allah, you are believing that He is the one who controls all benefit and harm and no one else does. Why? Because He is the creator of the asbab, of the ways, of the means, of the mechanisms, of the causes, of the effects, and everything that happens of provision, of food and drink, of illness, of health, and everything that takes place in the dunya, it is all by way of Allah and His qada and His qadar, and so He is the one who is in control, and this includes control of benefit and harm that comes to every single servant. So the issue of dua in a general sense is clearly connected to Tawheed, and dua is from the greatest of the types and forms of worship. Now, dua is something obviously we make all the time, we do all the time, and when we look in the Quran and the Sunnah, we see there are many supplications which are general, outside of the time of Ramadan, like the adhkar of the morning and the evening, and likewise after the salawat, after the prayers. So all of this is very general. However, when we come to Ramadan itself, we see that there are some specific types of dua or specific situations in which dua is made. And again, this is connected back to the issue of Tawheed and taking opportunity of making dua in these specific circumstances. So for example, the first of those is a dua at the time of iftar. And from Ibn Umar, who said that the Messenger of Allah, he said, whenever he would basically break his fast, he would say, ذَهَبَ الظَّمَعَ وَابْتَلَّتِ الْعُرُوقِ وَثَبَتَ الْأَجْرُ إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهِ. The general meaning of which is that the thirst has gone and the veins have been وَابْتَلَّتِ الْعُرُوقِ moistened, or whatever, something similar to that meaning, and the reward is established if Allah wills. And likewise, we see that within Ramadan in general, we see that the Muslims, they make the Du'a'ul Qunut, they pray the Qunut prayer, and within there is a specific wording from Al-Hasan bin Ali, who said that the Messenger of Allah, he taught me words which I should say in the Qunut of Witr. And they are as follows: Allahumma hdini fi man hadayt, wa afini fi man afayt, wa tawallani fi man tawallayt, wa barik li fi ma a'tayt, wa qini sharra ma qadayt, fa innaka taqdi wa la yuqda alayk, innahu la yadhillu man walayt, tabarakta rabbana wa ta'alayt. So these are tremendous words which manifest the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. O Allah, guide me amongst those whom you guide. Guidance and misguidance is in the hand of Allah Azza wa Jal. And grant me safety, or grant me pardon amongst those to whom you grant pardon. Allah is the one who forgives. Forgiveness only comes from Allah Azza wa Jal. وَتَوَلَّنِي فِي مَنْ تَوَلَّيْتْ وَبَارِكْ لِي فِي مَا أَعْطَيْتْ وَقِنِي شَرَّ مَا قَضَيْتْ. All of these are affairs to do with the qada and the qadr of Allah Azza wa Jal, and the blessings that Allah gives to a servant, and the evil that He prevents him from, and so on and so forth. فَإِنَّكَ تَقْضِي, for indeed you are the one who decrees and decides, but none can decree over you. And indeed there is none, the one to whom you show loyalty, there is none to humiliate. He will not be humiliated. Tabarakta Rabbana wa ta'alayt. You are the one blessed, O our Lord, and you are the exalted. So these again we see are tremendous words within this supplication in Qunut that the Muslims repeat. Likewise also we must stick to the Sunnah whenever we make these supplications. And there's a point here from Shaykh ibn Attaining rahimahullah ta'ala. He says about supplication in general, and specifically about in the Qunut prayer. He says that to increase above and beyond this, what we see in the Sunnah, he says, La ba's biha. There's no harm in this. Because when it is established that this situation in Qunut is a situation of prayer, and also that even though this dua has been specified, it has not been prohibited from making other additional du'as. However, the foundation is that a person can make dua with whatever he wills, but as long as he starts with that which is clearly established. So as long as you start with what is preserved in the Sunnah, you make that the asl, you make that the foundation, and you always begin with that first, then there's no harm if you want to make other supplications for other affairs, because we have not been prohibited from doing that. There's no harm in that. And this is the statement of Shaykh ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala. And likewise there's a statement from Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, and the gist of the statement I won't read it all because it's lengthy. The gist of the statement, he says that there is no doubt that the adhkar and the da'awat, they are from the greatest of the acts of worship, and these have to be based upon at-tawqif, which means that they have to be restricted to the Quran and to the Sunnah, not upon one's desires, not upon inventions and innovations. So he says the best of the supplications are the adhkar and the ad'iyah an-nabawiyah, the prophetic supplications. So whatever we see from the Prophet ﷺ, then it is best to stick to those. In respect to the dhikr and dua, they are the best of what can be made in terms of adhikr and ad-dua. And as for other affairs from the adhkar, we find that maybe they could be unlawful, or they could be disliked, or sometimes they could contain shirk within them. And so for that reason, it is best to always stick to the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ. And then he says it's not for anyone to basically start instituting certain adhkar and certain ad'iyah other than the ones which we know are established from the Sunnah, in a sense where he wants people to repeat them and say them continuously, as we do with those which are clearly reported in the Sunnah. He says this is the foundation and the beginning point of ibtida', of innovation, and innovating that which Allah has not granted any permission for. So the point being in all of this, first of all, the excellence of ad-du'a in a general sense, and its connection to the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal, and then specifically in Ramadan, making use of one's opportunities in order to make as much dua to Allah Azza wa Jal as possible. And then there are specific times, for example, when you break fast, and likewise in the witr, in the qunut of the witr. This is for the, when the Imam reads the qunut in the witr. Then all of these are situations in which we see an emphasis on making dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. Finally, we see that the dua of the sa'im, of the fasting person, is mustajaba, it is answered. In the hadith, ثلاث دعوات مستجابات دعوة الصائم ودعوة المسافر ودعوة المظلوم. There are 3 supplications which are answered, which are responded to. The supplication of the sa'im, the fasting person, the supplication of the musafir, the traveler, and the supplication of the mazloom, the one who is oppressed. The one who is oppressed. So all of this is the first objective of a Muslim, is that he is resolved to make dua to Allah Azza wa Jal as often and as frequently as possible, but sticking to the prophetic supplications, the prophetic adhkar, and attaching one's heart to Allah, and knowing full well that no supplication will go unrewarded. As we established, either Allah will respond to your supplication, or He will repel, unknown to you, an evil that might have otherwise come to you. And that's why a person should never ever despair of making dua, nor should he ever say, I made dua to Allah for months and months and months, for weeks and weeks and weeks, for years and years and years, and He didn't respond to me. This is the sign of a jahil person, ignorant person, and an ungrateful person. Because unbeknown to that person, Allah Azza wa Jal, in return for his du'as, Allah Azza wa Jal might have been repelling harms and evils that might have otherwise come to him, to his body, to his person, to his health, to his wealth, to his possessions, to his family. Right? So many evils could have been repelled from him, unbeknown to him. That's why a person should never, ever, ever complain about dua not being answered. Because just by virtue of making dua, that person will benefit in one of 3 ways. Either he will get what he asked for, or evil and harm will be repelled from him, from what Allah decrees, or on Yawmul Qiyamah, he will be recompensed in full for his dua. So all of this collectively, we'll finish with this on the issue of ad-du'a. Ad-du'a is from the manifestations of Tawheed. So it is upon us to make use of this, inshallah ta'ala, in Ramadan, and to understand the connection of dua with the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal, and make it frequently and upon what we find in the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So this is point number 4. And so we move to point number 5, and this is the second of the objectives of a Muslim behind Ramadan, behind his fasting. A person should always think that behind his fasting there's a goal that he's trying to attain. What is that goal? So from the attainment of that goal is tahqiq muraqabatillahi ta'ala, to actualize the muraqabah, the observance, or basically acting in a manner in which you are aware that Allah Azza wa Jal is observant of you. So you are mindful and observant of Allah Azza wa Jal. This is your goal behind the fasting, that by the end of Ramadan you have greater muraqabah than when you started. So what does it mean? What does muraqabah mean? The answer to that is given in a tremendous statement by Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, who explains al-muraqabah in connection to the names of Allah Azza wa Jal. So he says, Inna muraqabat Allahi hiya at-ta'abbudu bismihi ar-raqib, al-hafiz, al-alim, al-sami' al-basir, فمن عقل هذه الأسماء وتعبد بمقتضاها حصلت له المراقبة. So he says, the muraqabah of Allah, it's a hard word to put into a single word in English, the muraqabah of Allah, basically to be mindful and observant of Allah's knowledge of you. So he says the muraqabah of Allah, it is to worship Him through His names. Through His name of Ar-Raqib. Ar-Raqib means the one who is watchful, ever watchful. Al-Hafiz. Al-Hafiz means the one who is guarding, meaning he's watching and preserving. He is watching over you and safeguards and knows everything about you, is preserving everything about you. Al-Alim, the one who is all-knowing, so he has knowledge about you. As-Sami', the one who hears everything that emanates from you. Al-Basir, the one who sees everything that you do. These are 5 names of Allah Azza wa Jal. And he says, whoever understands and comprehends these names, what they mean, and worships Allah by what they require from him, حَصَلَتْ لَهُ الْمُرَاقَبَةِ. This will then, he will acquire al-muraqabah. So this tremendous statement connects this muraqabah of Allah. Again, we see Tawheed again. It connects to the names of Allah Azza wa Jal, the 5 names that we mentioned, that they bring about this great and tremendous act of worship, al-muraqabah, which a person seeks by way of his fasting. And so this indicates to us, we can give a number of other examples to show how the names of Allah Azza wa Jal, how they affect Tawheed al-ibadah, the ibadah of a person. Ibn al-Qayyim gave us one example here in this short statement. We can also say, for example, let's take the names of Allah, Ar-Razzaq. Allah is Ar-Razzaq, the one who provides and sustains, Dhul Quwwatil Mateen, and that he is the possessor of, intense power and ability. So when a person reflects upon these names of Allah Azza wa Jal, this then brings about in an individual at-tawakkul. He will develop the station or this act of worship of at-tawakkul, because he knows Allah is Ar-Razzaq and Dhul Quwwatil Mateen, that all sustenance comes by way of him. So here now we have a connection between the names of Allah Azza wa Jal and how these names, they bring about, they actualize this worship in the heart of a servant. In this case, it is tawakkul. So there are certain names that are tied to a certain type of worship, as Ibn al-Qayyim has indicated. Al-Muraqabah, Allah knows everything, sees everything, hears everything, is watchful over everything, preserves and guards over everything. This now makes a believer have muraqabah. Likewise for tawakkul and taking the ways and the means. There are names and attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal that draw out these traits and qualities in a believer. Likewise, we can say, when we see it in the Quran, we read in the Quran, Shadidul Iqab, that Allah is Shadidul Iqab, and the Tawl, that he is one who is severe in punishment, and that he has a far reach, that you can't hide and escape from him. But he has a far reach, an easy reach. You are in easy reach of Allah Azza wa Jal. And that he is severe and intense in punishment. This now draws out of the believer from in his heart fear, al-khawf, and aspiration, apprehension, that a person becomes fearful. So this brings about the worship of the heart. Likewise, we see in the other side to fear, we read that Allah Azza wa Jal is At-Tawwab, Al-Ghaffar, Al-Ghafur, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, and these names which draw out in a person hope, Ar-Raja. He has hope in Allah Azza wa Jal, and he doesn't despair of the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal. So you can see how from all of these different ways, the names and attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, they draw out from the heart of the servant, the heart that knows, like Ibn al-Qayyim said, فَمَنْ عَقَلَ هَذِهِ الْأَسْمَاءِ, the one who understands these names and worships Allah by way of them, then he will acquire and attain al-muraqabah in the example that he gave. And in the other examples that were given, at-tawakkul, and khawf, and ar-raja, and so on and so forth. So we see that with respect to fasting in particular, we are focusing upon al-muraqabah. Why? Because fasting is a secret between you and your Lord. It's a secret. You can be hidden away from the eyes of the people, and you can break your fast if you want. You can engage in what is unlawful, whether it is with the tongue, whether it is with the ears, whether it is with the eyes, whether it is the heart. You can engage in what is unlawful. No one can see you, and no one can find fault with you. So the aspect of al-muraqabah is emphasized in fasting, and this in turn relates back to these names of Allah Azza wa Jal. And once again we see the connection to the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal in this tremendous action of worship. And we see Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَلِلصَّوْمِ تَأْثِيرٌ عَجِيبٌ فِي حِفْظِ الْجَوَارِحِ الظَّاهِرَةِ وَالْقُوَى الْبَاطِنَةِ. He says, for fasting there is an amazing effect in the protection of one's outward limbs, and likewise the inward strengths and faculties. And then he speaks about how fasting is something that basically safeguards the heart and the limbs. It keeps them healthy. It keeps your limbs and your heart to be healthy, and it returns them back to the healthy condition that they used to be in after they had been made ill and sick by way of the shahawat. So whatever shahawat made your body become ill, meaning fall into sins, and your heart become ill, meaning by way of whatever lust that you pursued, fasting is something, he says, it repairs it and brings it back, and it keeps it sound. So we see again from this the beneficial effect of fasting in rectifying a person. So likewise upon a servant when he fasts, therefore, in keeping with this notion of al-muraqabah, when a person fasts, it is not just your body that fasts, it is your hearing that is fasting as well. Right? So this is what we mean. There is an aspect of fasting which is hissi, it is physical, and those are the three main things: no food, no drink, and no relations, no sexual relations. Right? This is your body this is hissi, physical things. And then there are those things which are ma'nawi, which are conceptual. And so your ears fast, meaning they refrain from certain things, from listening to certain things. And likewise, your tongue should be fasting. Should be fasting from speech that is haram, from lying, from backbiting, and from things of that nature, evil speech. And likewise, from things of that nature. And so all of your faculties are basically fasting. And likewise, you should be upon serenity and calmness the day that you are fasting, and do not make the day that you are fasting and the day that you are not fasting to be the same. You cannot be the same. On the day that you are fasting, then you have to perceive and feel that there is muraqabah, and that your eyes, your tongue, your ears and everything is fasting in the sense that it's supposed to be fasting, and that you notice a clear difference between that day when you're fasting and from the day that you are not fasting. They cannot be equal. You should perceive that difference. And we see from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu an athar, a narration related back to him, al-ghibatu tahriqu as-sawm wal-istighfaru yuraqi'uhu faman istata'a minkum an yaji'a bi sawmin muraqqa'in falyaf'al. So this is a tremendous statement. He says, backbiting is something that damages the fast. So Abu Hurairah gave an example by way of backbiting. It could apply to any other sin, right? Any other sin. Fasting can either be invalidated completely, so you break your fast or on purpose or whatever, or it can be damaged. A fast can be damaged. There are certain things that damage your fast, but they don't break your fast. So he says, backbiting damages a fast. And istighfar, seeking forgiveness from Allah, patches or mends the fast. So whoever is able to bring a fast which is muraqqa, which is a mended, patched up fast, let him do so. So this indicates to us that you might bring a fast which you have harmed and damaged because of certain actions that you have fallen into, but you still have the chance of mending that fast. You can reach iftar, having mended and repaired your fast, having stitched it up and repaired it. This is the meaning of the word muraqqa, a mended, a patched up fast. The word itself comes from stitching, when you stitch and sew something, right? So you've patched up the fast. So if you fall into a sin, if you do something that you know is going to harm the reward for your fast, no problem. You can make tawbah to Allah, you can make istighfar, you can patch that fast up, and still reach iftar. If you do so, it is better to do so with a patched up fast than to do with a damaged fast. And Ibn Rajab, rahimahullah ta'ala, he comments upon this statement, and he says, فَصِيَامُنَا هَذَا يَحْتَاجُ إِلَى اسْتِغْفَارٍ نَافِعٍ. Our fasting is something that is in need of seeking forgiveness that will be of benefit to it. And likewise, righteous action that will intercede for our fast. Because how often do we damage our fast by way of speech, and then we mend it and we repair it? And he says that, how quickly can harm come to, basically to a fast. So he says the intent here is that a person who wants to fast in the true sense of the word, then let him preserve his head from what might come into it, and his body from what it might contain. Let him remember death, and let him desire the hereafter. Let him leave the beautification of the world, and this is what will lead him to the actual true Eid of Fitr, right? The celebration, which is when he meets his Lord. This is when he will be pleased with seeing Allah Azza wa Jal. So basically, Ibn Rajab is basically saying that obviously we can patch up the fast, we can mend the fast, and we can meet, Allah Azza wa Jal like this, but it is better for a person to prevent himself from that to begin with. And this is by remembering death and desiring the hereafter and so on and so forth, and realizing that the reward is with Allah Azza wa Jal. So we'll conclude with that there. So point number 5 is that a person should be seeking to increase in his muraqabah of Allah Azza wa Jal, that he knows Allah Azza wa Jal is seeing him and observing him. And fasting is the greatest of deeds through which a person can develop that state and that quality. Why? Because the nature of fasting itself is such, is that it is indeed a secret between a servant and his Lord, and it carries all those meanings within it. This leads us now to the next objective of a believer in Ramadan or through his fasting, and this is tilawatul Quran, the recitation of the Quran. Ramadan is the month of the Quran. The Quran was revealed in the month of Ramadan, and the entire Quran is Tawheed. And you have come across the statement of Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala in Madarij al-Salikin, in which he explains that every ayah in the Quran comprises Tawheed and witnesses to the Tawheed and calls to Tawheed. Then he goes on to explain, again we'll summarize the statement here for shortage of time. Basically he goes on to explain that in the Quran contains 5 types of knowledge. Every ayah in the Quran will be in one of 5 categories, and they are as follows. First of all, he says, فَإِنَّ الْقُرْآنِ إِمَّا خَبْرٌ عَنِ اللَّهِ وَأَسْمَائِهِ وَصِفَاتِهِ وَأَفْعَالِهِ فَهُوَ التَّوْحِيدُ الْعِلْمِ الْخَبَرِ. So either the Quran is providing knowledge about Allah, information about Allah, His names and His attributes and His actions. So any verse that you read, it may contain Allah's names, His attributes or His actions, right? So this now is conveying to you the Tawheed of Allah's names and His attributes and of His rububiyyah. Or, that's number 1. Or, number 2, it is inviting you to worship Him alone without any partners, and to abandon everything that is worshipped besides Him. So this now is a Tawheed al-Iradi al-Talbi. This now is the Tawheed, basically it's the Tawheed of Uluhiyyah, the Tawheed of Ibadah, the Tawheed of singling out Allah in worship. So an ayah might contain a command for you to worship Allah alone, or to abandon the worship of others besides Allah Azza wa Jal. That's the second type of khabar in the Quran, or the second type of ayah in the Quran. Or thirdly, وَإِمَّا أَمْرٌ وَنَحْيٌ وَإِلْزَامٌ بِطَاعَتِهِ فِي نَهْيِهِ وَأَمْرِهِ فَهِيَ حُقُوقُ التَّوْحِيدِ وَمُكَمَّلَاتِهِ. Or the Quran is either it is commanding you or it is prohibiting you, and it is making obedience binding upon you with respect to Allah's commands and prohibitions. So this now is the rights of Tawheed. Right? Everything that is in the Sharia, the commands, the prohibitions, this is actually from the rights that follow on from Tawheed. So this now would include all of the ahkam, all of the ibadat, all of the commands, prohibitions. So either a verse, so any verse could contain this information, commands and prohibitions. This now is the third type. The fourth type, he says, is information about how Allah Azza wa Jal, He honors the people of Tawheed, about the people of Tawheed, the prophets, their followers, the messengers, their followers, about them and how He honored them, how they obeyed Him, how He supported them, what they did in the life of this world, how He honored them in the hereafter, and how He rewards them. All of this is centered around the reward for Tawheed and its people. So a large number of verses, they speak about the people of Tawheed, who are the prophets and messengers foremost, and their followers, and how Allah Azza wa Jal, how He honored them, aided them, supported them, and rewards them with the greatest of rewards. So akhbar related to the whole of that. That's number 4. That's what you'll find in the Quran. Or number 5, وَإِمَّا خَبْرٌ عَنْ أَهْلِ الشِّرْكِ وَمَا فَعَلَ بِهِمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا مِنَ النَّكَالِ, and to the end of what he said, and or it is information about the people of shirk and what he did with them in this dunya of retribution and the punishment that came to them. And so this is information about those who departed from Tawheed, unlike the group before who adhered to Tawheed. So akhbar about them, their actions, their deeds, how Allah punished them, and so on and so forth. So you find that in the Quran are these 5 types of knowledge. So every ayah falls into one of these 5 categories. Right? It is either information about His names, attributes and actions, His rububiyyah, or it is calling you to Tawheed and prohibiting you from shirk, which is uluhiyyah, or it is the legislation of Allah Azza wa Jal, the ahkam, which is from the rights of Tawheed, or it is about the prophets and messengers and those who are from their followers, the people of Tawheed, and the reward that belongs to them, or it is those who depart from Tawheed and are from the people of shirk, and how Allah Azza wa Jal treated them, and examples are given from the nations of the past. So we see that the whole Quran, the entire Quran, is Tawheed, and it was revealed in Ramadan. It was revealed in the month of Ramadan, and specifically on Laylatul Qadr. So a believer in Ramadan, what is he going to be concerned with? There are 2 things: the huruf and the ma'ani. The Quran is the words. We concentrate on the words, we learn the words, and likewise the ma'ani, the meanings, which means that we memorize and we recite, and likewise we focus upon the meanings. So in this regard, there are 2 statements from Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim likewise. So he says, وَمِن ذَلِكَ تَعْلِيمُ حُرُوفِهِ وَمَعَانِيهِ جَمِيعًا بَلْ تَعَلُّمُ مَعَانِيهِ هُوَ الْمَقْصُودُ الْأَوَّلِ بِتَعْلِيمِ حُرُوفِهِ. He says that meaning to teach the huruf, the actual wording of the Quran, and likewise the meanings together. However, to learn the meanings is the actual intent behind learning the words. So you're not just memorizing and repeating. The intent is the actual meanings, to grasp the meanings. And that is the first intent and the first goal behind learning the Quran. Because he says this is what will increase Iman. It is the meanings that will increase you in Iman, when you ponder over the meanings of the Quran. And Ibn al-Qayyim says, وَتَعَلُّمُ الْقُرْآنِ وَتَعْلِيمُهُ يَتَنَاوَلْ تعلم حروفه وتعليمها وتعلم معانيه وتعليمها وهو أشرف قسمي علمه وتعليمه فإن المعنى هو المقصود. He says to learn the Quran and to teach it, what does it mean? It means it includes 2 things: to learn the huruf and to teach them, meaning the wording of the Quran and to teach it, and to learn its meanings and to teach them. And this is the most noble of the two types of knowledge and the two types of teaching, because it is the meaning which is maqsood. It is the meaning which is actually intended. So this means that the greatest of the two things is not that you just recite the Quran and think, right, I'm going to read the whole Quran, which is reading the huruf, but rather let me extract the meanings of what I am reading. This is the greatest goal and the greatest objective. So perhaps there might be a person who will read the entire Quran. He will every day read a juz or something, and he's finished the whole Quran. This person now has concentrated on the huruf of the Quran. But perhaps another person, he will read and he will concentrate upon the meaning. So maybe he will go back to the tafsir of As-Sa'di or something, and ayah by ayah he will stop and look and take the basic, the meaning from the ayah and reflect upon it and spend time upon it. And so by the end of Ramadan, this person, because he concentrated upon the ma'ani, then he will be of greater benefit than the one who concentrated on the huruf. Even though we are not belittling concentrating on the huruf either, because reciting the Quran has a tremendous reward to it as well. So obviously we're not belittling, recitation of the Quran. But what we are saying is that to concentrate upon the meanings is the primary objective. Right? So a believer should try to fill his heart with the meanings of what he is reading, because that is what is going to increase him in iman. But as for reading the huruf recitation, that will bring him reward. No doubt it will bring him reward. But it may not bring him in an increase in iman, because so long as he's not focusing upon the meaning so much. So it's important to understand that distinction between these two things, as indicated by Ibn al-Qayyim and Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala. So in the Quran, in the Ramadan, obviously the recitation of the Quran is emphasized because it is the month in which the Quran was revealed. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. The month of Ramadan is the one in which the Quran was revealed, guidance for mankind, and clear manifest evidences of guidance and the criterion in Surah Al-Baqarah. Likewise, we find, in fact, all of the revealed books were actually sent down in Ramadan. We have a hadith which is declared Hasan by Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala in his Silsila As-Sahiha. And in this hadith, it is the hadith of Wathila radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. أنزلت صحف إبراهيم أول ليلة من رمضان. So the scrolls of Ibrahim alayhi salam were revealed on the first night of Ramadan. وأنزلت التوراة لست مدينة من رمضان مدينة من رمضان. And the Torah was revealed after 6 days had passed, or 6 had passed. Didn't say day or night. 6, I assume it's night. 6 nights had passed after Ramadan. وأنزل الإنجيل لثلاث عشرة ليلة خلت من رمضان. And the Injil, the Gospel of Jesus, of Isa alayhi salam, was revealed after 13 nights had passed of Ramadan. وأنزل الزبور لثمان عشرة خلت من رمضان. And Az-Zabur was revealed after 18 nights. It doesn't say nights, but I assume it's nights from the context. Nights had passed from Ramadan. وأنزل القرآن لأربع وعشرين خلت من رمضان. And the Quran was revealed after 24 had passed from Ramadan. So all of these books, from the Suhuf of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the Torah of Musa alayhi salam, the Zabur of Dawood alayhi salam, the Injil of Isa alayhi salam, and the Quran of Muhammad sallam, all of them were revealed in the Quran. So this indicates you once more that the Quran, which is this uncreated speech of Allah Azza wa Jal, and which is a completion of whatever Allah Azza wa Jal sent to the messengers that came before him, all of this indicates the tremendous nature of Ramadan and of fasting itself. And because the Quran came to establish the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal, then again once more we see the connection between fasting and the Quran and the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. And we see that from the Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, who says that the Messenger of Allah was the most generous of people in Ramadan. And in Ramadan he was most generous, and he would meet Jibreel alayhi salam, and Jibreel would meet him every night from Ramadan and would present, Messenger of Allah would recite the Quran to him, and whenever Jibreel alayhi salam would meet him, we would find that the Messenger of Allah would be the most generous of people. He would be more generous than a wind that would be sent. Meaning he would have more goodness and display more goodness and khair than whatever goodness a wind would bring with it. Meaning of rain and things of mercy and things that the rain tends to bring with it. The wind, sorry. So this then is the recitation of the Quran. So a believer should be seeking ad-du'a, increase in ad-du'a, and connecting that to the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal, and its great connection with the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. Likewise, the muraqabah of Allah, establishing his muraqabah of Allah, and how the muraqabah of Allah is tied to those names of Allah, Al-Raqib, Al-Hafiz, Al-Alim, Al-Sami' Al-Basir. So establishing his Tawheed from that angle. And likewise here, the recitation of the Quran, all of the Quran is Tawheed, from those 5 aspects that we mentioned. And to focus upon the ma'ani more so than the huruf, than the actual wordings. Why? Because that is what will bring the increase in his iman. And how again that is connected to Ramadan. This leads us to number 7, a 7th objective, or the point number 7, and the 4th objective. And this is tahqiq al-taqwa, actualizing taqwa of Allah Azza wa Jal. And this is in fact the stated objective behind fasting. We see that Allah Azza wa Jal, He said in the very ayah in which He commanded fasting, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed upon you as it was upon those before you, in order that you may achieve or attain taqwa. And a taqwa, as you know, what does it mean to be pious? It means that you give obedience to Allah upon a light from Allah, meaning upon knowledge and understanding, hoping for the reward of Allah. As in the statement of Talq bin Habib, هي طاعة الله على نور من الله ترجو ثواب الله وترك معصية الله على نور من الله تخشى عقاب الله. That you obey Allah upon a light from Him, meaning upon knowledge and understanding, hoping for the reward of Allah, and you abandon disobedience to Allah upon a light from Allah, fearing the punishment of Allah. So this is what is meant by at-taqwa. This is what it means. Scholars have given other explanations as well. From the most common or popular of them is that the taqwa of Allah, what does it mean? It means that you put between yourself and between the punishment of Allah a barrier. This is another meaning or explanation of at-taqwa. And others have explained, they say at-taqwa is like when you are walking on a ground in which there are thorns that can harm you. So you walk with care, you lift up your garment and you walk steadily so that you are not harmed. Meaning that this is how you proceed upon your deen, upon caution, upon care, and taking this, being aware of danger. This is the meaning of at-taqwa. All of these are ways in which at-taqwa has been explained. Al-Baghawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says about this verse that we read, he says, this verse, meaning to obtain taqwa by way of fasting, لِأَنَّ الصَّوْمِ وَصْلَةٌ إِلَى التَّقْوَى. Fasting is a means to reach at-taqwa, because within it there is subduing your soul. You are conquering your soul. You are breaking the shahawat. You are dissolving the shahawat. And it is also said that because you keep away from the shahawat of eating, drinking and relations, then this is what is meant by attaining at-taqwa. Attaining at-taqwa. And likewise, Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, لِأَنَّ الصَّوْمِ فِيهِ تَزْكِيَةٌ لِلْبَدَنِ within fasting there is the purification of the body, and it limits the ways in which shaitan, he approaches and comes and approaches. And that's why we see in the hadith, O youths, O gathering of the youths, whoever amongst you is able to get married, then let him get married. And whoever is not able to, then upon him is fasting, for indeed it is for him a wija, meaning it is something that dampens him and weakens him so that he doesn't fall into pursuing his lusts and his desires. So fasting has that effect upon an individual. It removes the ability of the shaitan to flow through him and to pass through him, and it is easier for a person in that state, in that condition, to have the taqwa of Allah Azza wa Jal. So the fifth objective, or the fourth or the fifth objective, I've lost count now, I think it is the fourth, that a believer should be seeking, is to acquire the state of at-taqwa of Allah Azza wa Jal. And a person should focus upon this, considering the fact that his days are numbered. Your days are already written in the decree of Allah Azza wa Jal. You don't know when you will be taken away. This could be your last Ramadan. The days have been written, the provision has been written, and these seasons of goodness, the mawasim of khair. So for example, Ramadan is a season of goodness in the Islamic calendar. Likewise, the 10 days around the days of Hajj are the days of goodness. And likewise at the beginning of in Muharram, there are certain times in which Allah Azza wa Jal has given us to benefit from. And so Ramadan is one of those such things. If you are not actively pursuing to become more pious, and you are not more pious by the end of Ramadan, then you haven't benefited from Ramadan. It's a waste. You've wasted your time. And it could be the last Ramadan that you will come across. Maybe Allah has decreed for you that you will be taken before the next Ramadan. So this is the fourth objective that a believer seeks. And again, this is connected to the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. Having taqwa of Allah is connected to his Tawheed, as is apparent. This leads us to the final objective, the fifth objective that a person should keep in his mind. And this is tazkiyatun nafs, the purification of the soul. To purify his soul. With fasting, a person is purifying his body, is cleansing his body. His body is withholding from food and drink, which at other times are the cause of his falling into sin, his sluggishness, his inability to think clearly, and so on and so forth. This is what food and drink does to you, especially when taken in excess. When he fasts, that influence is not there anymore. And so shaitan is unable to flow in his blood in the same way that he is outside of Ramadan. And so, just like the body, benefits from fasting in that sense, then similarly a person's soul, he needs to purify that soul as well, to make tazkiyatun nafs. So how does a person achieve this? Well, first of all, in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. This is in general, that the one who purifies the soul, he is the one who will rejoice and win and succeed. And the one who dassaha, the one who corrupts and makes it impure, then he's the one who will be the loser. This month of Ramadan, and specifically the act of worship of fasting, is the greatest of affairs by which a person can make tazkiyatun nafs. And we've already seen in what's preceded in our lecture in the first part and so on and so forth, how the action of fasting, the manifestation of Tawheed within fasting is tremendous. And so it is one of the greatest of means by which a person can achieve tazkiyatun nafs. So we see in the hadith, Inna shaitan yajri min ibn Adam majra dam. Indeed, shaitan, he flows within the son of Adam just like the blood flows through him. And likewise we see that the Ramadan huwa shahrun tufattahu fihi abwab al-jannah wa tughallaqu fihi abwab al-nar wa tusaffadu al-shayateen. Ramadan is the one in which the doors of paradise are opened, and the doors to the hellfire are closed, and the shayateen are chained. They are chained together. So this means that basically a believer, look at all these different angles. Number one, you are not, your body is deprived of food and drink. So your body is free of the circumstances in which shaitan can freely pass through your body. Likewise, your appetite for your desires is dampened and weakened. Right? So here's the first thing that is happening in Ramadan. Secondly, the shayateen are locked away. Right? So the stubborn shayateen are locked away. They are unable, first of all, to come into you and flow among you because of your fasting, first of all. Secondly, they are actually chained. And so within this condition that you are in, it is the easiest of circumstances in which you can make tazkiyatun nafs, the purification of your soul. So this is why a person should turn to Allah, turn to actions of obedience, turn to dhikr, to trim his soul and to remove from it all of its diseases and its calamities and its shortcomings, and to use as much of his time as possible with the Quran, with dua, with so on and so forth, to try to purify his soul. We see that from the great supplications of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is the following mighty supplication related by Muslim and others, that he used to say, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-ajzi wal-kasl. O Allah, I seek refuge in you from incapacity, from being incapable or unable, and laziness, wal-jubn, wal-bukhl, and from cowardliness, and from niggardliness, being greedy and stingy. These are all the harms that come to people at different levels. You could be someone who's just lazy, your day goes, you've done nothing beneficial, you are sluggish, you are tired, for whatever reason. Either you're just lazy, maybe you've eaten too much, you've gone to excess, or you've eaten the wrong foods, just sluggish and lazy and incapacitated. Seek refuge in Allah from that, and take the ways and means to avoid that situation. So, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-ajzi wal-kasl, wal-jubni wal-bukhl, and from being cowardly. This is now from the diseases of the heart. You are a coward. You are scared of, it could be different things, worldly harms, worldly calamities. You are scared of the disbelievers and things like that, with the fear that is not permissible and not natural and not justifiable. And this is cowardliness. Wal-bukhl, that you are stingy and greedy. This is now the heart being attached to monetary things and material things. All of these are now diseases of the heart. Wal-harami wa'adhab al-qabr, and likewise of senility in old age, and from the punishment of the grave. Allahumma ati nafsi taqwaha. This now connects to our previous two objectives, taqwa and tazkiyatun nafs. O Allah, Allahumma ati nafsi taqwaha. O Allah, give my soul its piety. Grant my soul its piety. Wazakkiha, and purify it. This is tazkiyatun nafs. Anta khayru man zakkaha, for indeed you are the best of the one who can, the best of who purifies it. Anta waliyuha wa mawlaha, you are its wali and its mawla. You are the master. You are the one in control, and you are the master of my soul. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa'. O Allah, I seek refuge in you from knowledge which does not benefit. Wa min qalbin la yakhsha, and from a heart which does not have awe of you, fear of you. Wa min nafsin la tashba', and from a soul which is not content and satisfied. Wa min da'watin la yustajabu laha, and from a dua that is not responded to. So look at how in this hadith the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he supplicated for two things. He asked Allah Azza wa Jal to give his soul its taqwa, and to give and to purify his soul. So we should use Ramadan to achieve these two tremendous objectives, which is to make yourself acquire the taqwa of Allah, the objective behind fasting, and to purify your soul at a time when it is the easiest to purify your soul. Why? Because your body is not tied down and made sluggish by way of food and drink. Your lusts and desires are dampened. You can't physically, your body doesn't allow you to desire them. And the shayateen have been locked up. And you see that the doors of khair have been opened up. This is the greatest time for you to acquire taqwa and for you to purify your soul. And so we see the Messenger of Allah making dua for these two things around the other things which are poisons of the heart and blameworthy characteristics, and likewise from those four tremendous things at the end, from knowledge which doesn't benefit, a heart which does not fear, a soul which is not content and satisfied, and from a dua that is not answered. So this brings us to an end of the fifth objective that a person should be seeking. We mentioned from those things, first of all, ad-dua, increasing in your dua, and how dua is connected to the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. Establishing the muraqabah, being more watchful of Allah Azza wa Jal, because He is watchful of you, so you are more observant, and specifically the names and attributes of Allah that relate to that. Thirdly, the Quran. Ramadan is the month of the Quran, the revelation of the Quran. To recite the Quran, but to focus upon the ma'ani more so than the huruf, because the meanings are what bring about this iman and increase you in your iman. Likewise, tahqiq taqwa, actualizing taqwa, and likewise purifying the soul. So if you put these five things between you, in front of your eyes, that these five things I'm going to start at the beginning of Ramadan, by the end of Ramadan, for each of these things I can see that I physically benefited. My dua every day, I was making dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. I reflected upon the Quran, its meanings I understood. I studied certain sections of the Quran with the tafasir, and it increased me in my iman. Number three, that you become more observant of Allah, that Allah is watching you and hearing you and seeing you, and so on and so forth. Number five, you've actually attained more taqwa than what you started with, and your soul is more clean and pure and relieved of its harms and maladies and so on and so forth. This is what you should be seeking and pursuing through your fasting. So we'll finish by simply stating that once more, we see that in the whole of Ramadan, we see the rububiyyah of Allah Azza wa Jal, the names and attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, and likewise the call to the uluhiyyah of Allah Azza wa Jal in all of the various ways that we outlined. So Ramadan, fasting, is a month of emphasis of the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. And so if you enter Ramadan thinking like this, linking it all to the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal, you will acquire tremendous benefits from Ramadan. You will acquire tremendous benefits by entering Ramadan with this particular understanding and with this particular outlook. So we'll conclude our lesson with that. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to benefit us from what we have heard, and to give us tawfiq in implementing this in the month of Ramadan. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bless us with what is to come in the days of Ramadan, by way of the siyam and the qiyam, the fasting, and likewise the reading of the prayer. So with that, we'll conclude our lecture there today. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, wa jazakumullahu khairan.